on, guys? It's Alex here again, your gracious host, coming at you with another Axe Effects tutorial. And this time, it's about something I do every day, and that's to drive. So let's jump right in, shall we? So I'm going to go through this top to bottom like I always do, and I'm going to explain real quick what each one does. So right off the bat, you know, we've got the basic tab, the tone tab, the graphic EQ tab, and the advanced tab. I'm not going to go over the tone tab or the graphic EQ because they're basically both EQ type tabs. I'll go over in another video about graphic EQs and parametric EQs, which is going to be completely relative to this. But I'm not going to go and dive into this if I'm going to do a video specifically on it later. And this is pretty self-explanatory stuff. The basic and the advanced, though, they're a little bit more interesting. The basic being the less of the two, and the advanced being kind of, in my opinion, the more interesting of all of the tabs that you've got on this drive module. So let's get right into it. So on the BB Pre, we've got the gain, the bass, and the treble, and I'll just kind of quickly go over what that is. Here on the right on the notes, we've got basically every single weird named parameter that you'll find inside this module, and I've kind of given a definition that seems relevant to it. So the gain, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows what gain does. At 0, you've got a pretty clean signal. As you increase this sucker up, you end up with way more gain. If I had this thing on, clean signal, and that's what that thing does. So if we go over here to the bass is pretty self-explanatory, increases the bass. Treble increases the highs. Alright, so let's keep on going down this path. Drive is going to be, alright, moving on to the next kind of type. Try to find all of these different basic characteristics. So we got drive right here. Similar to gain, more amp-like in my opinion. So at 0, you've got nothing. Tone is going to be, I kind of defined it over here, but it varies. Usually increases mids and highs while kind of maintaining or cutting lows. So we go down to 0, we're going to have a lot of lows. Increase this sucker up. You're going to hear a lot less lows, more highs and mids. Increase it up to 10, you're going to hear a lot of noise. Sorry about that was probably pretty loud, but keep on going. Bit crusher, drive and tone again. We'll just keep on going. I'll come back to those later. So we've got mid-frequency, mid, treble, and bass. These are all very much similar to what you'll get in here, except you have multiples, right? So you're going to be able to stack these things on top of each other more or less. So you got bass, this one's actually quite... Alright, let's keep on going. So, yeah, you can pretty much guess what these do. Kind of phases it, right? That's what that one does. Alright, gain, tone, you've already heard those. Distortion. Distortion is basically exactly what it sounds like. At 0, you're going to get almost no signal. And then when you bring this sucker up all the way to 10, it's massive distortion. Drive, tone, similar. Distortion, tone, gain, bass, treble. You've seen those. Drive, tone, distortion, filter. All right, this is a new one. I'll show you what that does. So the filter is just going to be exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be filtering out certain frequencies and then allowing others to persist. So drop this down. You got a lot of lows, very little highs and mids. You increase this, highs and mids return. You increase distortion. You're going to end up with a lot of, pretty much a lot of highs, mids, a lot of distortion. Pretty good drive sounds. Of course, I'm going to let you figure all these out. This isn't really me kind of displaying what this does, but more or less me telling you what these controls do so you can find what you like. Drive and tone, you know what those do. Try to just find the unique ones. Bass cut, have that in here, but what it's pretty much all in the name, right? Bass cut. Bass cut's low. That means the bass is going to be a bit higher, so as you increase the bass cut, the lows dip out more. Actually, it's the exact opposite of what I said. So as you increase the bass cut, the more bass there is. Kind of a strange name. It's not like that for all of these. Hoodoo, gain and tone. So bright, you increase the brightness. You increase the high frequencies. Alright, so we got distortion, bass, mid, treble, mid. Yep, you've seen those before. Just want to make sure that you guys know what all these controls do. Sustain, this one's pretty intense. Basically, you're increasing distortion and you're also increasing sustain a ton. This one's got crazy sustain. Alright, and then tone is going to kind of change the tone and the shape of it again. We can come back to some of these perhaps when I'm going over the advanced tab. Distortion, tone, you know what those are. Filter, drive, tone. Contour. So what this contour is basically, you can kind of think of it like an orange amp shape. It's kind of changing the shape of the distortion, the way it looks on the time domain graph. But basically, you can kind of hear it. That's what that one is. Oh, skipped one. I think that's going to be all of the major controls here. Voice. This one's a little bit different. So voice is these are all such like odd names for basically very similar controls. This is the hard part about the drive module, is that they have these kind of esoteric names that aren't really very descriptive, and they're kind of controlling very similar things. Sometimes they kind of mold two characteristics together to make perhaps a voice. Like I've named it in here. It's like a tone and a contour put together. That's the Zen Master. Alright, so we've gone through all of the different 55 types, or 57 types. Obviously haven't given you a demonstration of each one, but now we're going to go down to the Advanced tab, and there's two main pages that you'll see in the Advanced tab. One that looks like this, and one that looks like this. And all of them, what they're essentially doing is changing what they're at, what these characteristics are at, and what different type of page they are. They're never going to be a mix of the two. It's 50-50. You get this one, or you get this one, and they're all just changing that kind of thing. Now I'm going to tell, basically I'll use let's see, let's use this Blues OD because it's not too loud. So the diode type, basically these are all in real life, like, you know, in circuits and whatnot, these are different types of diodes. And each different diode, when you run voltage through them, they will leave a voltage drop, and they'll also change your signal a little bit. They've got interesting characteristics which basically they create distortion. And so when you add these together, you know, you can tinker with them and make very unique sounds out of it. So if you have, like, per se, a blue LED, right? Go up here and increase the gain a little bit. So maybe we got 2 blue LEDs, right? And maybe, I don't know, like a 1N4001, I'll put on 3 of them. So depending on where this bias is at, it's gonna, like, basically take on the characteristics of, like, one side. So because right now we got the diode on the right hand side, there's gonna be, it's like, depending on the type of diode, there's some gating effects almost. So that's what these are all about. You change the diode type. You can, you know, have them symmetric, and that you have 2, you know, blue LEDs, have it right in the center, and you'll have kind of symmetric distortion. But depending on what you have in here and how many, you can have very wildly different sounds. So here, let me give you an example. I'll throw 4 on there, bias over here, and I'll throw a D18 on this side. Obviously, not the greatest sounding distortion, but it is there, and you can kind of hear it a little bit. Sorry, after that, just whacked the camera. All right, so that's what that does. The bias, the diode quantity, and the diode type. So bass response is essentially what it sounds like. It's bass response. I gotta get rid of this. This is ridiculous. Increase that, drop that in the middle. Get a little bit more symmetric. So as you can hear, the bass is down here is much more prevalent. The highs are a bit cut. Increase that up. The bass is a little bit less, but the highs are definitely more present. Dry level, basically you're increasing the dry input, which when I say dry input, I mean the direct signal from your guitar. Usually with these types of circuits, the dry input comes in, or it can cut some of the dry signal out before it hits the drive pedal. It's not a mix. It's not the amount of, like, signal that's going in or, like, coming out. It's just a different kind of approach to that. But either way, you can tinker with this in some of these configurations. It sounds very different. So in slew rate, this is a very kind of it's a strange characteristics in, like, amplifier design. At least when I was doing it in engineering school, it was to control how fast the voltage changes, or it basically you can control the rate at which you're going to be getting these big impulses, which is usually the impulse response, like your IR, like your initial upfront attack, your pick attack. So I guess in here, you know, it limits impulses and whatnot. Let's see, in the actual documentation, it basically says it limits this large signal frequency response. Turning up this control simulates the limited high frequency response inherent in drive pedals using early op amps. So it's not something that's completely descriptive in, like, what it does to your tone, other than it limits large signal frequency response, which kind of minimizes the amount of attack you hear up front. All right, lastly and not least for this part is the bit reduction. So it's similar to another part that I mentioned in the delay. And basically it's 24 bits minus the amount that you go up by. So once you get it to, like, 16 to 20, you're really reducing the signal level, and you're getting some kind of bit crusher type noises. Alright, so sample rate. You reduce the sample rate, and you're basically introducing what signal processors call aliasing, which basically means some of the frequencies kind of ride over on top of each other, and some of the signal leaves things out. Basically, the higher frequency content you play, the higher the sample rate needs to be in order for your signal to be kept within integrity. So if you reduce this, the high frequency content is going to go first. Kind of some wacko stuff. Get some lo-fi craziness going on. Alright, so that's about that. Let's get to one with the other types of controls, which are very similar. It's going to be it's not going to be necessarily the diode types, but it's going to be a hardware type. But it's not going to be as specific. So like you got diodes here, you got FETs, which are a type of transistor. You've got a full wave rectifier here, germanium type, basically a germanium transistor or a diode. You got hard clipping, which is basically how hard you're going to clip, how intense it is. You got a high voltage vacuum tube, or perhaps just a tube. You got an LED, which you had inside the other one, except it was very specific. You had different color LEDs, like red, red, orange, blue. Low voltage tubes, nulls. You got op amps, silicon, and soft and variable. All of these sound very, very different. I'll give you a couple examples. It's a FET. High voltage tubes. You'll notice this one's pretty crazy. Full wave sounds wild because there's no negative turn on an AC signal with this one. It rectifies everything, keeps everything overhead. Sounds pretty crazy. And then you can change the clip shape. Just do all sorts of stuff. These are crazy amounts of stuff that you can do with these. So this is the main two parts that differ from the other one, and that with these you can go from, you lose the dry level in the bass response, but you get a clip type and a clip shape, as opposed to a diode quantity and a diode type. So here you can have, aside from just diodes, you can have other types of hardware. And that's pretty much it. That is all of the major things that make the drive module different from any other module. And then inside of there also you've got the tone and graphic EQ. If you have any other questions about what's going on in here, leave some in the comments. I'd really appreciate some feedback. If there was anything left unanswered, once again mention that as well. If you liked it, slap a like down and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. But aside from that, that's it. I'll catch you guys on the flippy floppy. Ciao. Once I can find my, stop recording button. Here we go. There it is. For real this time.